Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're doing a rotation video about PortalCraft. Thought I'd go with something a little classic, a artifact straight up deck. I mean, it's just straight up old artifact style deck. Nothing too crazily new in it, I don't think. I think it's actually all pretty much old cards, which I was completely fine with. I wanted to revisit some older decks, and this is a good start, so why not revisit an old PortalCraft build, or at least a pretty much old PortalCraft build. This is fairly reminiscent of what I used to build for artifacts when Chronogenesis kind of released, and pretty much just after that with Dawnbreak Night Edge. These were definitely the kind of things that I liked running in the decks. It definitely worked out pretty decently overall, and it really kept me going. I mean, Puppet really did take off more than artifacts in the end, at least to kind of go into the competitive scene, but artifacts had a very strong base, and if they do get any more half decent support, it could definitely take off again. So we're going to get right into it and check it out. As far as this deck doing well in the meta, definitely not. I would not recommend this if you're looking to rank up or climb at all. This is just kind of looking back at an old deck and seeing how it kind of performs now. That was kind of the idea I wanted to go with for it, and it seemed to do reasonably well as far as artifacts can go with what they've got. If we did end up in a more OTK meta that was a little bit slower, similar to the Chronogenesis meta, this deck could definitely hold its own a lot more. Right now, most finishers are either dead on 10 exactly, or they're running something that will finish you even sooner, or just purely beat out what artifacts can do, which is a little disappointing. The only real bad matchup I used to have with this deck was Forest, because of Brambles. Brambles is now gone. That matchup is now a fair bit easier, but a lot of additions from other classes have really made all other matchups just a little bit more difficult, and that really does hurt this deck. But if you wanted to give this a go, I would definitely recommend aiming for some early artifact generation. The new mechanization card, I did consider putting it in here, but it didn't feel nice. It didn't give me a lot of resonance control straight off the bat. And this deck obviously is always very tight on space. And Bad Cather is kind of like just a one-off, which is always nice. Pretty cheap kind of buff card. Although the new Omen might be better as a 7-drop buff, so that's definitely something to consider. But again, we're looking at an old deck. This wasn't rehashed to be super new. It was just to see how well an old deck like this could perform from almost a year ago now. This deck was pretty much a year old in December. So the end of December, yeah. Gonna be pretty nuts to see how the game shifts again in what will be, what, year 3? Yeah, year 3-ish for me. I mean, that's going to be pretty nuts. Of course, the game being released June 2016, we are now in 2018, coming into 2019. It is going to be interesting to see what year 3 does to the game. So, Deus Ex Machina obviously is a pretty key card in this deck. Very easy to get to normally. You can draw it out pretty consistently. You don't always have to play it on 6. I actually don't mind playing it on 7 quite regularly, but outside of that, you really just want to go for whatever you can. Sephiroths are nice, but sometimes they do also have to be sacrificed to get a decent line of play going. But in this situation, we're actually fairly well off. The only real disadvantage now is that we do need to clear this board out as best we can. And right now, we don't have a lot of really amazing options. I mean, we're going to do... Actually, I think that is... Yeah, no, that is lethal. Okay. Oh, sorry, no, just off. I forgot, we don't have a Storm on the 2-drop there, the 2-3. Well, not Storm, but we didn't have it active for attack, so just off, which is going to put us very, very close. The one bonus we have is we've got enough health to kind of last this out, which is going to be our biggest advantage. So a nice Radiant Artifact just to throw to the board because we're going to be in Resonance anyway. So why not just put whatever I wanted to the board now. Then we have another Radiant, which means even if they wipe this board, unless they can put up some form of ward or get a really good heal, they're not going to survive this turn. And because they couldn't clear the board anyway, that is going to end them. So a little disappointing for them, but great for us. So we'll take it, and we'll take the win pretty easily. So our next matchup is actually against Shadow. Who would have thunk it? I mean, it's Shadowcraft.
Target sighted.
I'll teach you some manners.
It's still doing fairly well in the rotation format. Shadow really hasn't dropped out for quite a while. Dropping into lower tiers. At least not a lot this year. Not compared to what was the previous year, where after Tempest of the Gods it was pretty much unseen for a lot of that. I mean, it had a few little decks pop up, but nothing that other than maybe Reanimate, that was actually nuts. So we're starting off reasonably solid again. I don't mind going with the Magisteel Lion as our first card. It's usually a solid choice. We're going to get a chance to play Pure Hearted Singer, which I always enjoy playing early. It does take away the chance to really do anything crazy, but it's worth it. Fran's Curse, that does hurt a little bit. They're definitely going to get the Reanimate option. Because we're going to pretty much go spin Aria on 5, may as well play out our 2/2 drops just to flood our board a little bit and fill our deck with artifacts, since we already have Des Ex in our hand. And Osiris is a little iffy on this matchup, personally. It's definitely a super good card. It's just disappointing Shadow's mostly legendary filled now, like as far as that goes. They're an extremely expensive deck. Very similar to what Haven has turned into, and if you remember the old Wallet Dragons, they are also very similar to those, which luckily have died down a fair bit. They're definitely not as legendary heavy as they used to be for Dragoncraft, but Shadow and Haven really have just become too expensive as far as playability goes. If I had to recommend anything for a new player, it would probably honestly be Bloodcraft still. Dark Feast Bat is still reasonably cheap, reasonably okay, and does okay job, and is probably still going to be relevant in the next expansion, I reckon. So it's definitely a one way to go. That, or probably Lion, or maybe Mysteria, although Mysteria might drop a little bit next expansion. We'll just have to wait and see, honestly. So meta production, pretty decent way to do things, keeps us in and out of Resonance pretty effectively. I'm not too worried about losing these here. I mean, Hekarabe and another Des Ex isn't that useful to me. So, like, if we were going to lose those, that would have been okay. I just had to remember I didn't actually play the Des Ex anyway yet, because we are only on turn 6. I got sidetracked talking about other information stuff and completely lost track of where I was in this match. They're doing a fairly decent job, though, of sustaining themselves, so that's nice. Ultimately, we'd want to draw into our Banish removal. That would do the job here wonderfully. Unfortunately, we don't get that lucky, so we have to make do with what we do have. And that's getting any kind of rush artifact we can to deal with this. Which worked out okay. I mean, it did the job. It means they've only got one follower on. They can't deal a astronomical amount of damage this turn. And now we just need to kind of hold ourselves here, which is not going to be the easiest things to do. The only real bonus is we're going to sacrifice the Machine Soldier for a whole new hand, which we're going to need at this point. And since I can't hit the 3/1 due to the Clash effect yet, then we definitely wanted to go for the standard attack route. Ooh, Crow. That's a fun one. I feel like those two mini expansion cards for Shadow are just absolutely crazy. They do a wonderful job supporting the current Shadowcraft builds. They're definitely not broken cards, but they were way better than most other mini expansion cards. Excluding maybe Lion, I guess, but that is just one card after all. And Lioncraft has pretty much died out at this point. It was good to start with because it was cheap and easy, but once people adjusted, you really don't see it anywhere near as much now. Omen of Craving on an empty board, and we have a Saphira for our turn 10 to take the game very, very easily. Just winning out overall, which is great. They would have really had to nearly wipe the entire board to have a chance at surviving anyway, so definitely worth it in our books. So I definitely enjoyed having some flashbacks and playing this kind of older deck in the current meta, although it definitely wasn't that great. I think over the course of 10 games I won 3 or 4, which certainly wasn't honestly the best. It was some of my worst games I've had in probably the last week as far as winning goes, but that's probably just because this deck really isn't designed to handle itself in the current meta, and that's what I wanted to really show off with this. It was mainly just, hey, this deck can have some okay games, but even those okay games were reasonably close, to the point where I'm a little unhappy that they weren't just complete sweeps, because we had a fairly decent start off with most of those, and even though this deck is not the dearest deck, I mean, it's only got 5 legendaries in it, but it's still well below the average, and if I was going to run a Portal deck right now, it would definitely be some form of Omen Puppet deck, as they're just way better for PortalCraft at this stage. But honestly, I do hope PortalCraft gets some better support in the upcoming expansions, because I'm really looking forward to picking it up more and playing with it. It's been one of my favorite top 3 classes since its release almost a year ago now, and I really can't fault how much fun I've had with Portal when it's doing at least moderately well in the meta. So until next time, you'll find the deck list in the description below. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content. See ya.